Hello and welcome to another episode of the Edufuturists podcast. We are super close to Christmas and you are all obviously on countdown. There's no teacher that's listening to this or watching this and thinking, do you know what? I'm full of energy right now. I've got loads to give. There's nothing else to do. So we're on that countdown. It's getting to that time. Hopefully you are all ready for the break or have started your break or whenever you are when you're listening to this. And if it's after Christmas when you're listening to this, well, never mind. Hope you had a good Christmas. Steve, how are you, buddy?
Good. I take my hat off at this time of the year. The teachers are already tired and it is really challenging wheeling out those big TVs and the DVD and the VHS recorders with National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and Elf and all of those jokes. Take my hat off. Only joking. I know I'm only joking, everybody. I know learning never stops. You'll be teaching out to the Friday, but those are my memories of everything else. And just because I'm a Christmas movie fan, I love Christmas build-up and everything else. So I am mega excited for it. But yeah, and also mega excited to have a conversation around today's topic, but also with the AI Pioneer, Matthew. We've talked about it a couple of times now, but it's
yes.
To bring you back on a couple of times after the win and to talk about actually your steps and the fact that we helped you. You were a nobody before.
Yeah.
You got the Edufuturists.
I wouldn't be nowhere without you both.
I'm only joking, mate. But actually, you know what? It vindicates actually the people that nominated the shortlisting actually you as a winner, that actually some of this stuff was already out there. Isn't anything to do with us, but also the great work that you've been doing well beyond just these books. But for such a period of time, mate, that the Edufuturists community did well nominating, shortlisting, and then voting and
great.
winning.
And like honestly, I was completely in shock. Like I'm one of those people that never thinks I never won at birthday parties or it's party games. So now I've got that mindset in there. But it was great. It was like obviously such an honor, and it was great, and such a great group of people as well on the night.
Yeah, for sure. And to be fair, there's a few things I'm going to throw at that. First one is this. Yeah, we'll just take 20% of royalties of anything that you make. I'm cool with that. Second thing is the nominations are out again for this year's AI Pioneer. Don't forget to do that. Links in the show notes. But also, I think what's really lovely about all this is that how it brings people together that wouldn't have necessarily met. So I know you came over from Bucharest for the event. And we'll talk about Bucharest in a little bit of a moment, but you came over to Leeds for that, and we know that we brought people together that had never maybe met in person, and we had that in real life community, and I know that resonated for you, and we're trying to keep building this community, right, of people who are doing great things in education, and you are certainly one of them. Matthew, tell us a little bit about you. And the kind of work that you do on a day-to-day.
Me, I work I'm assistant school director of a school in Romania, like a British overseas school. So I've been here for 7 years. Originally, before that, I was working in Tottenham, in a state school in Tottenham. So was going to met my wife, who's half Romanian, which is part of the reason we're here. Like we've been to Romania over the summers, and it was a beautiful country. So I'd fancied teaching internationally, and it seemed like a good fit. But I've got a quite solid state school background as well, where obviously went to state school, taught for 7 years in a state school, and then came here. But yeah, and I mainly deal with teaching and learning, which is quite a nice intersection. I've worked to the position where I line manage all the heads of department and the curriculum, so it made integrating AI and the ed tech and those kind of things quite easy, because I was kind of talking directly to the source, like the curriculum leaders, so I could kind of put a bit of sway and influence, I think at one point I had the VR headset set up in my office, so people would come, I just put a set on them, and then get them to try it out, or I'd get them to sit with me during the line manager meetings and just try things out. And it just helped to spread the word and kind of spread it. And it kind of helped in a kind of middle position where I could have a little bit more influence. But yeah, like I think my interest in AI came around quite early when ChatGPT came out. Someone randomly asked me today, and we had quite a wait list in Romania, so it came out in November. I think I couldn't get on till like December, and I ended up just playing around during the Christmas break, and then came back in and did staff training straight away on it. and then obviously started writing, sharing stuff online, and then I think gone fully down the AI online kind of posting rabbit hole by August. But that meant like when I went back in August, I had quite a good roadmap in my head about where I wanted the school to be and what we needed to do to prepare students and just general steps we could take, because it was such a community of people that share such a lot and share so freely. It was so nice to have lots of ideas. And then Tom Rogerson invited me to speak at Cottesmore. And then I decided that, oh, this looks fun. I'll arrange a conference myself, not realizing that that is like also a full-time job. And then I did that, and that was great. Ben came over for the first edition. And now we're organizing that again, which again, it took like 2 months to convince myself I wanted to do it again. But yeah, so we're in the kind of final throes of organizing that for February. But the main thing is now just keeping, I don't know, it's not my full job AI at the school. It'd be cool if it was, but it's kind of like something I've tagged on myself. But like I was just saying, like in January, my main job is making sure we pass our British overseas inspection. So I've got to almost shift gears to myself to make sure that like I've still got a full-time job. That's still like the main priority. AI is just a nice kind of added bonus that makes all the other things work a lot smoother for me. And I can feel that helping the teachers at our school, feeling the benefit of that as well in terms of their workload and kind of the creativity it's bringing to the classroom. Like AI itself maybe not being creative, but them bouncing ideas around and trying new things, because they can interact with AI and go like, I'm trying this, I want to try this new idea. And I've said before, like I was never trained on my PGC in problem-based learning or gamification, but I can use ChatGPT to give me some structure and give me some ideas around those things, which I think it's a really underrated tool for CPD and helping teachers try new things out and then tweaking it to what's going to work for them. And the other day, like we've got Franz Kafka in the year 8 curriculum, and it's quite a heavy book, Metamorphosis. So I just sat with the head of English for 30 minutes. We loaded up ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini, and we just went back and forward and tried to plan a really interactive scheme of work for students that would kind of help them, especially students in Romania. We have got like 80% of our school is Romanian nationals, so they're all kind of EAL. So how we can break this kind of heavy, meaty text down into something that's approachable and accessible to them. And it just allowed us to spitball ideas. First thing was great is we were almost on the right track ourselves. It came up pretty much the same ideas as us, which was a good sign. And then we just kept digging into those ideas. So I think I've rambled enough there. But yeah, that's kind of me / where I'm currently at in a kind of a 5-minute blip.
It's a really interesting concept and a couple of thoughts and a couple of questions, really. So do you feel AI is helping you plan better your strategy, implementation and CPD programs for teachers in AI? And firstly, like you've said, actually, the ability to use it and steer your own thinking rather than this is a tool I need to plan delivery and learning and focus for teachers around it. And also, do you think that is probably one of the differentiators between other tools, if we're going to call it a tool, of VR and all those other things, that actually is helping influence its own implementation and the technology use rather than just the technology being used? Hopefully, does that explain? Have I asked that question appropriately, I think?
So for me, like the first thing about CPD and me using it to help plan CPD, like it's one of those humble moments where it's been trained on pretty much everything that came before. So it knows how to run CPD. It's learned like all these instructions about how to run engaging sessions and like plan those things. That's somewhere in the training data. So if you prompt it right, you can help get ideas on how to make your like sessions more engaging. And I think when I was at Brilliant, one of the examples I gave is how I've used it to help plan department meetings, which can sometimes be content delivery, going like, oh yeah, we need to do this strategy, but actually using it to help me think of ways to make those more collaborative planning sessions together, and like knowing that there's experts out in the field, and again, taking ideas that I've seen people do on LinkedIn or even take a YouTube video, which you can read the transcript of someone who's running like an amazing session that you think is really interesting. Go, how can I take that transcript or that YouTube link about how to use this cool strategy? How can I make that work for XYZ, like curriculum planning, or even coming up with like how we're going to do digital literacy as a team? How can I make that more collaborative? And I don't think many teachers, when they move into management, get training on how to do meetings interestingly or productively. And that's something that I'm using it to help upskill me, because I would say I'm guilty of that. We just get around the table, information transmission, any questions. But now we have like post-it notes, whiteboard pens out. Last one, we had stuff stuck all over the windows, and everyone was working together. And I probably naturally wouldn't have come up with that, or I would have come up with 20% of that. But it's really good. It's really good to give you new ideas and how to approach things in a different way.
Yeah. So the ideation piece of a tool like ChatGPT, and for many of our listeners, that might be the limit that they've worked at. So they may well have tried the free version of ChatGPT, and we'll probably dig into some of the things that you've talked about already in terms of some of the other tools. And we know that this isn't about people should use one tool over another, or these are the 5 tools that we recommend, because it's always a little bit troublesome when people do that. And I think it's always troublesome when people do that around EdTech, full stop. Like you say, do this tool, use this tool, because usually they've got a financial incentive to do that. And second of all, it's not everybody can do that. So we've got to find ways to manage. And it sometimes can de-skill a teacher. I know that me and you, we've all got a common friend in Darren Cochran, who talked quite a lot about that level of not de-skilling teachers by just all they have to do is press a button, right? So we'll talk about that in a moment, because I know that's part of the focus of your first book. But in terms of like the use of ChatGPT for ideas, and you've gone to it and asked it about potentially something that you can, how to make your meetings more efficient, or to make them more fun, or to make them more engaging, or to keep people on track, and how to create plans for that. And then that's I suppose that's you're talking about that being like that layer one, because that's the first place we start, right? So I need some ideas for, or I've written this, I need some ideas for an email subject line, or I need something to I've started a sentence, I don't really know how to finish this, or can you give me 5 other ideas that might be relevant? That idea for idea, that place of ideation, AI, generative AI in that space is powerful, right? So how do we go then? And this is just interesting just to dig into from my perspective. Or how have you done this from not just becoming, okay, well, I've outsourced my thinking to AI because now I don't need to think anymore. All I've done is I had a first idea, and then ChatGPT has given me 20 other ideas. It's planned my scheme of work for me. It's planned my meeting for me. It's given me all these things. What do you do with it? Once it's got to that point, how do you make sure that isn't now your experience, which I know it isn't?
Yeah, I think it's all about, I've never had a ChatGPT lesson or even agenda for me come out that's been 100% where I wanted. Like most of the time it's selecting, plucking, going back and forth. But I think because of the role of a teacher, it can do some of the admin. It could produce a scheme of work that might tick some boxes if that's the purpose of the exercise. Hopefully not. It can give you a lesson plan, but once you're live in front of 20-something kids, you're still thinking on your feet, and it might give you a framework, and it might give you the steps that you might need to go through. Or let's say if I'm trying something like problem-based learning, which I haven't done before, I might be relying on ChatGPT's plan more than my own gut because it's new to me. And then over time, I'll start to get a feel for it myself and start to use ChatGPT less, if that makes sense. I kind of use it to plug gaps and things where I know that maybe I've got some blind spots. I can get some opinions. And I just also run it multiple times and see what comes out. Or that's what I said when we were looking at the Franz Kafka scheme of work. We loaded up 3 different platforms and see what 3 of them said. And just to see if we get some inspiration from that and go, oh, we like that, we like that, we like that. And it's all about you putting the jigsaw piece together, because you've got more context than it has about your situation. Your prompt is the starting point, but it doesn't know all the stuff that's in your head about the kids that are in your class that you could spend how long are you going to spend typing a prompt? Like 20 minutes describing every single child and their needs, but you know that in your head, and you can use your human intuition and your gut instinct to start pulling out what you need from that. And I don't think that, and again, with de-skilling teachers and button pushing, depends. And again, I'm not a wrapper person. I only use one wrapper, and that's when it's student facing, because it has to be, because of GDPR and usage. So that's my only kind of time that I usually use a wrapper, when it's going to students, because I'm constrained there massively, so I need to. But it might be a good starting point, but you never know what's in that prompt behind. Your prompt is going in, but you don't know what's the prompts between you and the system. And again, I've not really used many of them. Maybe I should and experiment a bit more. I'm not sure how much pushing you need to do to make the output be different. Or like I would be my main experience is ChatGPT, so I'd almost go back and forth. I'm not sure if I'm not going to name any platforms, but if a wrapper gave me a lesson plan, I don't know if I can keep communicating with it, or if it's just, here's your plan, here's your worksheet. I think that's how most of them work, where I like the back and forth. And even if it is a bit of a pain for me to copy and paste into a Word document, at least I'm making some choices as I'm going and making some updates.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? And AI wrappers, that sounds like something like, I imagine like somebody trying to pull off Eminem or Jay-Z or something and trying to do that cool. Not Diddy, we don't talk about him, but the rest of it's all right. So like AI wrappers, what you're talking about there, for those people who were maybe just clarified it, that's what we were talking about earlier, where it's not you as the user asking this for these things. You want it to support you with a lesson plan and ideas for lesson plans, and you've got to give it some context. You press a button and it almost just generates that for you. And we're not anti that. Like you've said, nobody's anti that, but it's about like maybe using that as a starting point, or maybe using that when you're student focused and student facing, because obviously a lot of the age limitations around a lot of these platforms restricts the fact that students rightly can't use them from a safety perspective. That'll come on. We'll definitely come on to that in the book that you've just released. But so you're working out in a British school out in Bucharest, and you've got a whole range of needs in that space, a whole range of language needs, a whole diversity of curriculum understanding. You're in the leadership positions, so you're having to make sure that you're helping other people navigate some of this technology as well. So it's not just about you and your classroom, although you are still at the chalk face, so to speak. So in my mind, I wonder, like, from a personalisation perspective, that buzz phrase that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
I wonder, like, what does that look like? Because you've kind of intimated at that a few times, and I know that's a big thing, right?
The personalization thing bugs me a lot, because if you ask ChatGPT what could AI do in education, it will tell you about personalized learning pathways. And I was chatting to someone else earlier today, and it just can't do that now in terms of what people thought, like kids interacting and it personalizing it, even maybe shifting the school day and kind of the where this could lead. And I think the technology will get there, but right now the personalization is through me. It's me taking my context and what my kids need, what they did and didn't get, and I'm putting that into the system. I'm giving it that context beyond the boilerplate response. Same ChatGPT, same as a wrapper, will just give you a boilerplate response the first time round if you don't give it anything to go off. But I tell it my kids struggled with this. I want more questions on this. I need real world examples, and it'll give rubbish ones at first. But if you say I need real world examples linked to the X, Y, and Z, or I know my kids like the new 40K game came out, and they all love that. So I just got all the programming challenges made around Warhammer 40K for the day, and they were loving it. And that AI itself wouldn't have done that originally. So for me, it's a lot about you funneling in the personalization. And if I've got, like, I had a year 9 class at the start of the year, and I had an EL kid, but it allowed me to quickly generate resources for her, sometimes even on the fly, keyword sheets. And I said, she'd really need this. So I just paused the smart board, jump onto ChatGPT, fix it, print it, give it to her. And I could be a lot more responsive and fluid than I would have been before, because that would have probably taken me 20 minutes and the lesson would have been over. So it's just kind of things like that. But I think a lot of it is down to the teacher right now to think very carefully about their students and then bring as much of that context for personalization into what they're asking for.
Yeah, I think there's been some, let's call them AI tools. In the UK, Sentry, GCSE Pod, some bits where ultimately they've said their AI in terms of the creation of pathways for learners based on you get a right answer, it gives you a different resource and everything else. But I'm not sure actually through autonomy and through AI alone, I think it's still, like you said, it still takes a teacher to implement, tailor, and go again with some questions. So on the hoof, I've created this, but there's a big misconception with a group of students. Can you tailor this to this type? And going through there, I think that's what we're saying right now. It might get there, it might develop, but I think people expected it to be a play on some of those tools that said they were AI and have created personalised pathways. I'm not against Priya and the work that she's done at Sentry and everything else. We've had her on the podcast. We know her. But ultimately, actually, I think people said, oh, this is going to be the next step. It's not there yet, especially in the way that we are using generative AI and some of the wrappers and everything else. I think some other bits that might come into play that are AI and machine learning.
Though, you've got to go 100% screen based if you really want the full vision of AI personalization. And I don't think people really. I don't want that.
Whether we want it, but also the ecosystem. I don't think we do.
Yeah.
But also, actually, that medium, the thing that excited me the most was actually, and is still Gemini Live, that's coming on. And I know ChatGPT have developed theirs actually, where it's interactive with voice for younger learners, actually through voice in a different medium. Because right now, just being on a screen is the thing that we actually said that we were trying to at least navigate around.
Yeah.
But also, even if we wanted to be, we haven't. Schools I know we're not talking about necessarily Europe, but schools are banning devices. We don't have the infrastructure and the investment, so we couldn't even get to that point for personalised learning using AI if we wanted to, because we don't have the investment to get there anyway. So I don't know what did they think, that the AI was going to be coming free and bring its own Chromebook? What did they expect? It was going to roll in, drive its own AI car, or it was going to be riding Donald Trump or Boris Johnson on the back of the chicken. Apparently that was a high search for the image creations, and actually bring a device with it. I'm not sure what the world expected. We have to step into it. And actually, I think we're in the only first phase of AI and actually its capabilities. I think there's multi-layers of where we could take
voice,
it.
Though, our kids really like to use the voice features, even the chat bot. The wrapper we use hasn't got a great voice. Hopefully that'll improve. But the typical classroom isn't set up for 20 plus kids talking at the same time. So like, if you want to go to that next step, there has to be some redesign. And I think with proper, like the GDPR and privacy, being able to look at the screen and talk to you, if you're working on a maths problem, that's fantastic. But I think it does mean a bit of a shift in terms of how we approach school, because you can't just have 20. I've tried to do podcast lessons, being a IT computer science teacher. It doesn't work with 20 kids chatting in a class. You have to rethink the space a little bit, I think, for that to fully come to fruition as well.
Absolutely. And I think in the book, one of the themes is around equity in education. And ultimately, as you look through different sectors, independent schools, state schools, different sectors in regards to the investment that they have, different nations, ultimately, we have to ensure that whatever we're doing, and you talk about in the book, to help students, so it's not have not, how can we ensure that there is that equity across education for all of the different stuff, but also ultimately it's not just those that go to a particular school where there's a Matthew there or a Ben that's leading it, and also there's not that investment in regards to those people who bought premium and those people and those educators or students that have, for some reason, an IT person has turned off all of the tools for everybody, including teachers. So the teachers can't even use it and facilitate and support the educate. We're creating some real diversity in regards to equity in education right now, and I don't think that's an AI thing, but maybe explore what your thoughts on it in regards to and what you talk about in the book.
It's a tricky one, because I know that the constraints that schools face are high, and I know that it's hard to speak knowing everyone's individual context. but it's difficult. And I think but there has to be more investment. And I think eventually it's going to have to come from a governmental level in my mind, that it needs to, if you're going to make an AI strategy in schools, and if you're going to think about an ed tech, or even the push for on-screen exams and things like that, that's the infrastructure for that is incredible, that you're going to need for if every school in the UK moves to on-screen exams. But I think you can't allow people to be left behind. And I know that even COVID in the UK and COVID in Romania, in the rural areas, when we went into lockdown, just couldn't get on the internet, so just didn't learn. So I think it's about having a proper long-term strategy about meaning people don't get left behind by this. And even though you can say ChatGPT is pretty much free now for everyone to use, like at least a version of it that's decent. But if I haven't got the internet, or if I haven't got a device, then how can I get on that? And or even if you're like most of my kids back in the UK were, or even here, are on Sims with data limits, so they burn through that, and then suddenly you've got access, then no access. I think it's about, and I think maybe more partnership between the private sector and schools as well would help, because I know there's lots of talk about that, but I don't really see much investment coming forward. And if education is in AI companies' eye line as much as the media makes out or announcements make out, I don't see them approaching schools or working with us as proactively as kind of their rhetoric says. Lots of announcements, but I don't feel like there's a group of teachers who are on the inside track chatting to OpenAI or Gemini and going, hey, maybe voice would be cool. I think voice, someone in 11 Labs came along and they thought it was cool, so they added it. I don't think there was a strategy where they met with a load of teachers and school leaders and said, actually, to make this work, this is what we need. I think some of it is we've invented, or even from their end, we've invented a feature. Let's make that feature the educational tool. I think a lot more joined up thinking needs to happen, and it needs to happen on a countrywide level, and I think more of a global level as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I know that they do have like what's he called? Rishi? Is it Rishi Jaitley, who's the advisor at OpenAI? That I know that he's trying to have some of them conversations. And I know Dan Fitzpatrick's going to interview him in the new year to see what. But I think you're right. I don't think the sat an education. But then again, I'm going to be a bit controversial by saying this, not at you, Matthew, but more in general, is that I'm going to probably say that a good majority of the tech companies that we're talking about don't give a shit, and I mean that in a horrible way. I don't mean that they don't give a shit, but their bottom line is profit, like full stop. They're not like a lot of these businesses are about making as much profit as they can, and yes, they've got nice little charitable arms. Yes, they do things to help people in education, but we've seen all of them. We saw this in the pandemic, and I'll prove my point why I'm saying it is because the pandemic said, no, what we're going to do is we're going to give all these things away for free. I'm going to get schools getting into all these wonderful tools for free, and then thinking this technology is going to change the world. Now, I know the education systems didn't adapt to make sure that we could do that, but then also we get out of a pandemic, and then what happens? We start charging you for them the very same things that were helping you do what you need to do. And then schools have either got to find the money or they stop doing it and they lack commit. Everybody that said that education went backwards after the pandemic. I wonder whether that is tied to the fact that some of our tech companies didn't do. Well, anyway, I'll get off my horse on that one. But my point is that I think the advisory boards, the thinking about education, like the bottom line is business, right? And that you can't blame anybody for that. I think in some ways what I'm talking about here is, and what I'm trying to maybe come to, is that we as educators are still, I say we still as educators, like I still deep down believe I am, and the people that have got influence in education are the kingmakers in the room. AI is the biggest revolution, I think, the biggest disruption that we've seen in education. I still think it can have that personalisation thing, as long as it's not just personalisation, just using AI. I do think we've got an issue around technology inequity. And in fact, I read an article from OECD just last week that was talking about actually that could be the biggest problem in personalisation of education is the issue of equity, and the gap is creating a bigger gap because of it, or due to AI, or in the space of AI. So my thing really is, okay, and this is where I think what you've done and the kind of work that you're doing at the moment is well worth shouting about. Is you've written 2 books, probably part of a series of 3 potentially, but the first book was about AI as a guide for educators, and then your most recent book is about a guide for students. Because what I think we're saying here is, and this is where it comes back to where you were talking about personalisation. You were saying that the teacher is the one, the human in the room is the person that helps make this personalisable. So I wonder if you can maybe just talk at the first book, the Educator's Handbook, and then we'll get into the student one. Tell us a little bit about why you wrote that book, and then what the story is about that.
Well, it's quite it's not funny, but it is funny. Well, I got invited to speak at Brilliant, and I thought, you know what, I'd have a nice little 10-page handout summarizing what I'm thinking about AI. And I sat down, it ended up being like over 100 pages. And then, so I still released it because I thought, you know what, I've dedicated myself to this. But it was just a kind of filtered down version of everything I've been trying and all my thoughts about what's working, what isn't working. And I think I quite like to share what isn't working quite a lot, because I think that's important for people to know as well. And just going through some strategies of like how to prompt in what I feel is going to get you there. And based on the stuff we spoke about how to personalize it and the things you need to bring in and things you need to mention, and just showing some examples of it doesn't just have to be write my scheme of work for me, write my lesson for me. It can be more creative than that. And in terms of your input can be more creative than just saying do X, Y, and Z for me. And some examples of how you can bring that to life and how it can help support your preparation and your way you can deliver your courses and deliver the curriculum to students. And then going through some tools that people could use and try, and ones that I found really useful for me and really helped me. And then some frameworks for, like, if you were a teacher, how would you go about doing a bit of almost an investigation kind of cycle on this? So how would you look at the situation? How would you choose the tool? What would that look like if you trying that out? And then how would you reflect on that? Which I think lots of people might use an AI tool for the first time to plan a lesson. Maybe they used a wrapper, maybe they just prompted ChatGPT and said, give me a lesson for XYZ. And they just followed it as it was. It didn't go very well. But same as you would do for every lesson, reflecting on what didn't work, did AI get in the way? Did AI make something better there? Where did it work and where didn't it work? And I think that for me, it has to be constant reflection of how it's working and constantly thinking about. For me, sometimes I've used AI to the point where I've gone, hang on, I'm losing something here. So then I've drew back a little bit of using it in certain areas and tried it somewhere else and go, actually, this feels right. And I think that's the thing I was trying to encourage in that chapter, and trying to people to try things out, maybe push it a little bit too far out your comfort zone, and then see how that feels. And if it's getting in between you and your students, get rid of it. And if it isn't, try a bit more and see where you can take it. And then towards the end of the book, it's kind of just a distilled version of 3 steps. If you were a school leader or even a teacher who was keen, 3 steps that you might want to go through. And it's kind of a play on my accent. I always got teased for saying look, book and cook. So I just kind of thought I'd reclaim that phrase, being from Stoke. Look, book and cook, I have to say, when I'm outside of Stoke. But look, book and cook, just how you can look at the situation, see where you want your school to be, see how ready you are, see what people you've got, what staff you've got, what they need. If you've got people who are super keen on AI already, into tech, maybe you haven't got any of those. And then experimenting. I think book was the middle one. Writing a policy, which I think, even if it's not a full-blown policy, guidelines around data, guidelines around just some rough guidelines so people at least know what's safe. Because I've met some people that didn't know what they could and couldn't do, but as soon as you said you can do pretty much everything you want, aside from upload school policies and put in kids' names and certain things like that, then they felt free to go. And then the last stage is just all about reflection again. And I think that's the main thing you have to do when you're trying out any initiative in a school is a little bit of planning and a lot of reflection, I think, each time.
And just on that reflection piece, do you find in the work that you're doing with other schools and the conversation you're having online, then actually that reflective piece is the bit that people are struggling with or not implementing effectively or at all, where you hear it, well, I tried it and didn't really give me the answer that I wanted.
And I think that's the area that needs a little bit more focus, because I think that, again, even reflecting when you prompt, okay, I wrote a prompt and I got this and I didn't like it. Just going back to the prompt again, why didn't you get that? Or you forgot to tell it your lesson was a 30-minute lesson, or you only wanted this to be 10 minutes, or you didn't say it needed to be group work. And like sometimes you can reflect on the micro scale as well as the macro scale. But I think there needs to be more reflection, I think, especially as new tech emerges and you want to try things out. I think having a team of people that are willing to try things out and then reflect and report back to people and share wins and say why it was a win for them. And that's something I tried to communicate. I had this win, but this is why it worked for me, because I did this, X, Y, and Z, and this is my school and my context. Because not everything education doesn't work in every school. You couldn't probably take my approach that I've done exactly blow by blow at my school and that work in every school in the UK. It's got to be unique to every situation.
It does, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, because a lot of people think if I can just do this, and if interestingly, you know we've been at the same places a lot of times, and Steve, I know you've been there when this has happened as well for multiple people, where you put I'm always a little bit hesitant to put a slide up on the tools that I've used or the prompts that I've used or the frameworks that I'm using, because then people get the cameras out, take a picture of it, which is fine. I know that's what we do, but then almost think these people are the people that are doing it, so therefore I'll do what they do. And it feels a little bit like layer one, and I'm wondering whether maybe there's a book in this about this like layer one style learning and layer one style technology, and is that almost it's substitution, or it's like replication. It's that idea that even when we talk about like SAMR models and other things like that, actually what a lot of us do is do that in our own. Oh, look at me, I'm getting excited here. Like you hear somebody else is doing something really well, therefore I'm going to replicate that. And so if I replicate that, that's okay to a level, but actually what really needs to happen is then to contextualize that. And you need to be able to think about that, what that means for you. So you take bits of it, rather than saying, here's 10 tools that Ben's used, or here's a framework that X person has created, and you must follow that. It's not saying those things are wrong. It's saying that that's just the first layer, and then actually helping you think about what that then means in your context. Do you think that's fair based on what you've been trying to do with the book as well?
And I think you've just triggered something, because I should probably dig out an old blog, because we had some training a couple of years ago about Bloom's taxonomy, and it turns out there was 2 other taxonomies that they wrote at the same time, and one's called, I'd never heard of until this training, called the psychomotor domain, and it's mainly for sport, and it's about, and imitation is the first level of that, and it's almost Bloom's taxonomy if you wanted to learn a new skill. And I might dig that out, because at the top end of that goes into like first copying, then building up, and then building up to actually doing your own thing. So maybe I need to dig that. You give me an idea, I'll dig that one back out, because I honestly never. I thought Bloom's taxonomy was it. I didn't know they created. I think they tended to make 3, but they only make 2. But this one really stuck with me, and I use it when I teach coding. Like first you're going to copy me, and then you're going to go and slowly become more independent. So maybe there's some legs in that as an approach.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the missold things about technology often, that at one point it will improve things, it will transform things, and it will make your life better. And some of the bits it might save time with, like the AI, and I know there's some great work in the UK being done by organisations where you'll save time in basic planning and everything else. But ultimately, actually, with anything that you've got to learn, it actually takes a bit of effort and a bit up front. Like, ultimately, I want to be better at golf, but I have to play more. I can't then moan if I play a little bit, get out and go, Link, play terrible there. But I haven't put the effort in. In anything in life, and maybe it's a societal thing or whatever, I don't think it's to teaching. They go, didn't really solve the problem and it didn't help me. But you do have to put a bit of effort in, and it will be a bit painful to learn the new process in a different way as we go through it, but it will improve things, and it will be better, it will enhance, it will transform if you allow it to, but you've got to learn it and put some bits in and put some practice in. Practice makes permanent. It's not going to be perfect, but it's definitely going to make a permanent change in your practice. But I think that's a bit that I've saw when I was leading transformation in education, even now where people go, it's a little bit hard, that. But it is. I get it. And in education, again, not teachers' fault, we need to create more capacity around them to be able to try, learn and apply. When do they get a chance, apart from evenings and weekends, to actually apply new concepts, new things to their classroom or anything in life, because they just don't have the capacity to do so. So it will always be, we don't have time unless we create the space around them to facilitate and create lifelong learning back for our educators. I think we've lost sight of lifelong learning in educators. It's not through the fault of educators, by the way. We don't have a facility to support them with it. It's an add-on and the thing that you do in your own time now. That's not all right.
Yeah, it's about creating space and time. And I think I shifted the workshops we were doing to be more practical, and a little bit of stuff about prompting, a little bit of stuff about tools, and then what are you going to do after this meeting? What are you working on right now? Let's try to do that with AI as a companion or a co-pilot, and then just work on something they're working on right now, because it's the most contextual thing you can get. Like, I'm actually going to go and plan a year 3 lesson after this, so let's just sit and do it now with AI and see how that feels. And you could just kind of, and I became very hands off very quickly in the workshop, so just kind of topped and tailed it and just gave people space and time to work on something and experience it. And I was there if they had any questions, but mainly just became more and more hands off with the training.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the way, right? Isn't it? It's about making it so that you can utilize our experience, the things that we've done, the great work that you've done, learn lessons from them. I always remember my mum saying you learn from 2 things: you either learn from your own mistakes or other people's mistakes. So like, that's all right. So there's nothing wrong with that. You'll help people get there faster. But actually, we've got to then iterate into our space. Just before we get into our quick fire questions, because we don't want to keep you too much longer, because I know we're in a bit of a time delay where you are. It's a bit later over there. So we're grateful for you joining us at this time. You've just released this newest book that we can see here, which is AI in Education, the Student's Handbook. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about why you wrote this one that's different to the educator one.
This one came out of just basically globally, studies are saying that kids are using it more than adults and teachers. And I think there is concern, and the same for, if you mentioned about staff as well, about outsourcing the thinking process. And if we're aware that students are using it, and I've tried to load it full of examples of how AI can be used productively to enhance the process and not take away from the learning process, because our brains are hardwired for easy answers and quick fixes. So trying to think of ways that students could use it to really elevate their learning, and first starting off with how they can use it to generate things. And I don't mean generate ideas, but how they can use it to generate questions for themselves. Like, I'm studying this course, can you generate some questions for me? And they can interact and go back and forth. Then looking at like simulation, we've used it for like language acquisition and things like that, how they can use it to have more of a back and forth interaction with an AI system, instead of it being kind of like a knowledge dump coming out, or like, hey, write this essay for me. Coach and facilitator, I think, came out of something I spoke to you guys before about, is where I got year 9 to self-assess themselves on a certain set of skills They put that into an AI chatbot. It then wrote them all a personalized pathway for the next 5 lessons. So they're all working on their own targets. It generated a rubric for me, so I could still do my job as a teacher and give each student the feedback they needed. But I could grade 80 students over 5 lessons on their own progress, and they just used the AI as a coach. So I need to learn X, Y, and Z, and I've got 5 lessons to do it. It got it to break down the lessons for them, so they knew what to do through the 45 minutes, and then they could keep track of where they were. They could even upload print screens of their work and get feedback. And ultimately, at the end of that, they handed in the rubric, they handed in the final piece of work to me. But I just found that was the most powerful level, or kind of the most out there example I've done of using AI, where that was the most personalized it's ever been, where I almost stepped back. For 4 of those 5 lessons, I didn't speak. And I even went down to the head teacher and showed it. I recorded the class. It was just silence. All you could hear was keyboards clicking and mices clicking. And it was just kids were so productive when they used it as a way kind of to facilitate their learning and support their learning, not just give them easy answers. And I think that's what those chapters for the students are up building up through that strategy of how you can use it in one way, and you can use it really going up to be something which can really enhance the process for you. And it's something I've seen firsthand as well. So I thought that's why I wanted to pass that on, because I've seen that be really powerful.
Awesome. So we always finish with quick-fire questions, but we've been mixing it up. We've got new ones, so get ready for them. I'll go, then Ben, and then I'll finish. What is one outdated education practice that we need to abandon?
Exams for me, like IGCSEs, ASA level, those exams, huge exams.
Love it. It is short and sweet. It is quick fire. I'm always a bit taken aback when actually somebody answers quick fire, because that's what we're supposed to do, but nobody ever does.
I could expand, but I think
you're good.
Everyone's feeling, when I say that, I think I've got, hopefully people are nodding along. I don't think anyone's going to love exams. Let's keep them more.
Second question then is, how should we measure learning success beyond grades?
It's a big thing, because I think you need to know. This is one they say, you need to know each student incredibly well, and you need to know where. This is the thing. If you do, exams are an easy endpoint. I'm not going to be as quick on this one. Exams are a very easy endpoint because there's a list of things you need to know. Whereas I think we need to take a long, hard look about even what would be the endpoint, or do we need an endpoint? And then thinking about, if I'm a kid in a school right now when I'm in year 7 or year 6, what do I need to know? And that I think maybe I'm too ingrained in the system myself for this one, but I think it's a broader thing. If you pull the rug out of like, okay, we know there's a certain checklist of things that kids need to know. It's out, what do they need to know? When do they need to know it? And how do they need to learn it? And when do they need to apply it? That becomes a bigger question that I probably don't have the answer to, because maybe I'm too institutionalized at this point.
Yeah, feelings. How do they feel about it?
All
of the different things is
I'm just getting their viewpoints as well, because we get student voice on lots of things, and I do that. I get students. I've always from the beginning got students to at the end of every unit to give feedback on me and my teaching and how they felt the learning went, and I use a lot of those check-ins as well. Yeah, but I think it's about how I don't know, what does that look like? I think can't just be tests. I'll go back to my first quick answer because that was easier.
Okay, last one. What is one thing that you would want our listeners to remember?
That I think if you want to roll out anything in your school, and if the AI is that you've got to build in that time for reflection, and you've got to do that as on a personal level and as a team as well. About, if you just say we're going to be an AI school now, like, what does that even mean? And then once you know what that means or what you feel that is going to be, you can think and reflect on that and just think, have we achieved that goal? Is it going right? Is it going wrong? What is this enhancing learning? Is it getting in the way? And I think it's just about more time for reflection and more time for people to get together to reflect as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love a bit of reflection. I don't know if anybody knows any tools for helping reflection, but we won't talk about that. We don't want to get two brands mixed up. But yeah, it's absolutely right. We're going to link to Matthew's books, which are Amazon bestsellers, for those people who didn't know already. Well done on that, buddy. We're super proud of you there. And I know that what you're doing is having an impact. And I got to read a copy of this book, and I think what you're trying to do from a personal perspective, from an individual, but giving some handbooks, some ideas. It's not saying this will work for everybody. It's not a one size fits all mantra. You are really thinking about it in context. So well done on getting 2 books out there, and we're looking forward to seeing what the next one looks like. But more importantly, if you haven't already got hold of these 2 books by Matthew, please do jump onto those. And if you haven't yet nominated for Edufuturists Awards for Uprising 2025, the link to that is in the show notes, and you can head on over to Edufuturists website, where you can find out all about the event, where you can get your ticket, how you can nominate people, how you can partner with us if you're listening to this. And by the way, I feel like I need to say this at this point, like, even though we've been a little bit like, we're not digging out tools, right? We know that people are doing a really, really great job, and we're very, very grateful for a lot of these people who partner with us, who support us, who are really trying to push that envelope in education. So if it came across a little bit like we're having a go at EdTech tools, we weren't. We were just always wanting to make sure that it's contextualized and used. So thanks, Matthew, for joining us on the Edufuturists podcast, and we hopefully will see you very, very soon.
Cheers. It's been great to be here, guys.
Join over 30,000 educators at London's Excel in January 2025 at Bet UK. Headlining the arena, we have Stephen Fry, Dan Fitzpatrick, and Rose Luckin, to name just a few. There are 100 hours of CPD accredited sessions, from table talks to tech user labs, and over 600 exhibitors to inspire you with new technology for the new year. Educators, get your free ticket today at uk.betshow.com.